And I thought that was pretty apt. I'm excited to wrap up the writing contest, which we will talk about here soon, and maybe start conceptualizing what's next for us.
Great. Okay, thanks. Let's see. Did I miss anybody? I don't think so. Cool. Okay. Well, let's start off, I guess, with the Hometown Alaska show that was on Monday and is now also available from the KSKA website as a recording for folks who want to listen to it. I was super happy with how it all came together. Sarah really was kind of the backbone to the whole thing in terms of the contact with Kathleen to begin with, and then kind of weaving together the conversations with a number of different folks on different topics. So curious if folks heard the show, what they thought about it, any feedback, reactions, or next steps from that. Some of us got a nice note from Kathleen McCoy afterwards, just thanking everyone that participated in that, but also just acknowledging that she'd gotten a lot of good feedback from the show and discussions, and it seemed like it went well. But Sarah, why don't I throw it to you first? What was your thoughts, reactions? What do you think went well? What do you think we might do differently next time?
I thought it was really good. I'll lead with a bit of ego, but I'll explain. I was surprised with how little I talked, but that actually ended up, I think, being the better route for things because A, there was so much freaking content we had to pack into an hour. And B, we had a lot of guests. So I think it was only natural. I think I felt a little awkward in like where I could interject, but ultimately, like, I think that listeners want to hear Kathleen's point of view on things. She is the host. And then, like I said, we had so many guests that like it just ended up being that way. And in that fashion, I was able to listen in too and learn because ultimately, like, I don't think I had nearly the breadth or depth of knowledge that all the guests had in their specific, topics. So I think it ended up becoming a really good program overall. And I will echo Kathleen's expression. I've had plenty of people come to me and say that they listened in and it was really interesting to them, and they were really happy to have and hear that conversation somewhere at least. Differently, I don't think we could have done anything better. I think we nailed it really, for at least for the amount of time that we had. And I did let Kathleen lead a lot of the logistics side of things because ultimately she knows her listeners better than anyone else, and she also knows the typical setup she has for her guests and her program. So I think overall I was happy to be that sort of connecting piece, both in the program and the planning of it, and I think it came together really, really well.
Super. Ryan or Margie, I think both of you, were on the show, although maybe I'm mistaken if that was maybe Mita. But what other thoughts do you guys have?
Yeah, well, Kai, I think that may hint to one of the opportunities that I think I see for the section that Mita and I had. We were both in the same segment of time, but there really wasn't a whole lot of back and forth between the two of us. We kind of like talked for a chunk, and then Kathleen would like switch to the other person. And I think that it worked. I think we covered the information that needed to get covered. But in the future, my goal is to try and like pull other people into the conversation. And so I would want to push myself to find more ways to like loop Mita in and get that back and forth a little bit. At the end, when the end of the segment, Kathleen got a comment from a caller or via email asking about water as a resource. And Mita had an excellent answer. And then the segment ended. And I was really hoping to talk at least for a minute about in Flint, Michigan, the water crisis that has happened there and some of the challenges that have happened with Nestle packaging and selling water. Where the state has been incentivized to commercialize the water and not provide resources for the people. And water is something that I believe should be sacred and should be accessed by everyone, and that we should try and protect and preserve clean drinking water. And so probably best that I didn't get a chance to get that out, because I think I may have been a little bit too emotionally involved being from Michigan. but that was certainly something that crossed my mind. The other thing that that I took away from the show was just how much I enjoyed the format of being able to have just a conversation with some people around an issue. And I think if we look in the future to try and uh, share more perspective, reach a broader audience, that the group that we have and the topics that we have really would be ripe for a podcast or like a talk show conversation style of event. And I think that we could explore some really cool stuff if we leaned into that. But I really enjoyed it. So thanks for helping to bring that opportunity together.
Yeah, nothing
Other thoughts from you?
to add. It was a pretty brief appearance that I made because everything kind of ran over, it seemed like, but really was able to get the key points across and was grateful to be able to chime in. It definitely, yeah, it was just interesting because the whole kind of water wild card, like I guess that's the whole point of a call in show, is that it has that interactive aspect with the audience. But yeah, it felt like it meant that we didn't get into some of the other things, but that means that there's plenty of room for more conversation, both live on air and otherwise.
Yeah, I am, pondering how to potentially leverage or let this be a stepping stone into more of those kinds of conversations, kind of as Ryan was indicating, whether that would be an opportunity to do some more shows in the future, or whether it's the value of potentially doing some sort of podcast type of format to be able to capture some of the dialogue and some of the exchange. I'm not a podcast kind of guy to begin with, so I don't quite get it, but I think that might be a piece of the puzzle. So, others of you that got a chance to listen to it, any reactions on what was covered, what wasn't covered, or anything in terms of how you thought the show went over? Going once, going twice.
I guess, okay, Kitty, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Well, and unfortunately, I didn't get to listen to it, so I'm glad it's recorded. I'm going to catch up on it while I'm doing more transplanting after our call here. But I just want to say, again, a super strong kudos to all of you guys who took the initiative, took the opportunity, and really getting the word out. I'm really impressed with the reach that's beginning to happen, and it feels like momentum with the engagement of wider audiences. So yeah, really, really thrilled and appreciative of what you guys did. So excited to listen to it. Oh, and maybe it's our demographic, Kyle, but I don't listen to a lot of podcasts either. Like my daughter puts me onto one or two of them, and but then again, I don't get my life organized enough to schedule being available at the time that it's on. So I like the idea that maybe it's live but recorded, so then you have the best of both worlds.
Yeah.
That's correct.
I guess, Sarah touched on the ego piece of maybe not getting as much talking time as what she had hoped. And, that I guess is good encouragement for me to try and pull out and encourage your voice to be more present in the conversations in the future. Showing a little bit of my ego. I typically get like typecast as the Seeds of Change guy. And so when I had initially walked into the conversation, it was like as part of Alaska version 3, and then talking to Kathleen, it was very clear, like she wanted me there with the Seeds of Change hat on. And so it's just something that I'm aware of. But yeah, I guess you spend so much time doing something, that's how people start to think of you.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to point out, is that I was really really valued the discussion that I think Meta was having about the work they're doing on the Tlingit economic paper, and I think Margie, you're involved with that, and I thought that went over. I thought that was a really effective point, and I thought it really helped bring out a really important set of concepts that I'm looking forward to seeing develop further as that paper comes together. But I'm glad that we were able to get that into the show and to connect that up with the rest of the topics, because we did cover an awful lot, but I'm glad that piece was in there to help bring some balance to the overall discussion.
Yeah, agreed.
Good. Okay, well, thanks everybody for the effort to pull that together. It was certainly a wonderful opportunity, and I think that it came together really well, but it was also really a reflection of everybody willing to step into that opportunity and move very quickly when the opportunity came up. So I hope that it will create other opportunities like it, and I think we've demonstrated that we're ready to engage in those when they do surface, and look forward to the reach that show may have provided the discussion that we're having. Let's shift on, if there is anything else, to wrap up on the writing contest and look to see what loose ends there we need to talk about. I think the outreach to the participants, sharing, I think, some sort of official press release about the contest, the winners, maybe a little bit about the submissions is probably appropriate. And then I think there's also maybe some pieces of information that Jan or whoever takes over for Jan will need for the magazine. So Sarah, where do you feel like things are at? What do you need help with? What do I need to be doing to help what's happening at this point?
I think there's two major things. So touching on all of what you just mentioned, first and foremost, we need to contact all the writers and let them know who won, and then ask, I think, everyone if they could provide a bio. Maybe we could lead with some guiding questions for them to answer, and I'd be happy to put those together, and a picture or maybe a few, so we could pick from them, because sometimes people send really weird pictures, in my experience, at least, for a picture as well. I know that is what Jan needs for the winners. I think that's what would make sense for us to put for all of these submissions on our website. And then, yeah, of course, like to be able to write something and figure out our plan for essentially announcing the winners. I did email anyone who was in the initial judges email. Not everyone was a judge, but everyone, like those who read the email about getting everything together for judging. I did send an email out this week. I couldn't tell you the day, maybe Tuesday, about like what are our next steps for announcing. And I was specifically hoping to get Jan's feedback on, like, if she was okay with us announcing it first, or if she wanted to like let Alaska Humanities Forum do it. I think it makes sense for us to do it since it's our writing contest. And we did already announce the grand prize winner on Hometown Alaska, because I read an excerpt of hers that was not Queen of Harbor, Field Trip to the Future. I read an excerpt from that, and I think that was a really good way to wrap up the show, honestly. But yeah, I guess that's the two major things. How are we going to announce the winners, and getting into contact with the writers?
Okay. I think it's pretty clear from Jan's notes, both earlier with really allowing us to publicize this any way we wanted, but also her announcement that she's leaving the Alaska Humanities Forum. I think we ought to just lean into creating a press release that we can then share far and wide, as well as pulling out the information from the winners, so that we have everything that the Humanities Forum needs for their publication. I'm happy to take a first stab at the press release and pull that piece of it together, and then if if I can get, some information on, well, I guess I probably have the information in the spreadsheet. So yeah, I can get started on a rough draft of the press release. And if Sarah, you can follow up with the discussion we had about trying to get the information that Jan needs for publication, it'd be, I think, really nice to keep that moving, particularly with the transition. I don't want to have that get lost with Jan leaving.
When does she leave?
Oh boy, I think in the next week or two. It was just a note that I saw, maybe this morning, that she had taken a new job.
Yeah, I talked to somebody. She's last day of official work is on June 30th, or maybe that's her first day at Ashna. But she's going to be on contract until the end of this magazine. So she will see it through to the end. So you aren't going to lose that contact. You might just need her personal contact to continue.
Okay, that's helpful to know. I was worried, but now that gives me a lot of assurance that we don't need to worry about that. Just continue to work with her.
Yeah, exactly.
Still worthwhile to get it moving and get it done, though, because like I said at the beginning, I'm ready to wrap up the writing contest.
Yep. No, I
we had told. Sorry, I think we told everybody that winners would be determined by the 17th of June, right?
Yeah, 14th is basically this Monday, and the Hometown Last show overlapped with that.
Got it.
I mean, they were determined.
Right. Yep. Anyway, people might be on pins and needles is all I'm thinking. And then the last thing I'll say, not that we should hesitate at all in announcing and reaching them, but with the press release opportunity, that's earned media. How might you use it not only as a sort of a gift, here's the announcements, but also an offer for certainly joining us on Fridays, but maybe one of the summer events, and maybe a hint of an in-person type of event to continue the humanities woven in with the future work, because we're talking about something in the fall. I don't want to try to dream it up, but just letting people know that there are ways to engage. Stay tuned. Facebook,
Yeah, I agree. I think mentioning Alaska Humanities Forum, obviously, as the publisher, but then, yes, having one single ask at the end, like how do we want these people to follow up with this specific press release? Thinking about what kind of people would be interested in the writing contest in the first place, and reading the submissions and the winners, and then thinking about how they would be interested in engaging in the future. And then, of course, on the press release itself, we can have the contact information on the footer of the email and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll play with drafting something and then get it on the Trello board, Sarah, and we can try and clean that up. And then, are you still good to reach out to the participants and pull out the information that Jan needs for the magazine?
Yeah, that should be fine. All of the email addresses are on the spreadsheet, correct?
I'm sorry, I missed that.
All the email addresses for the writers are on the spreadsheet, right?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Then I can do that.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. Okay, let's switch over to talk about summer events. And just to let you know here, I'm melting in the truck at this point. I don't know how much longer I'm going to hold out here. I've got it fired up in the air conditioner, but I'm not moving down the road, so it's getting a little ridiculous at this point. But in terms of summer events, I guess kind of backing up into some of the pieces that I know are out there, we had talked about potentially something at 3rd and Ingra with Shelley that sounded like was a possibility in early August. We had talked about the idea of a Kincaid Park kind of event. And I know, Kitty, you just mentioned the idea about potentially a Girdwood event. And it seems like there had been discussion about something further far flung. Maybe Elijah was talking about something in the valley. So what I think any or all of these events need is just somebody who wants to make it happen, and pull together the time, the place, the logistics, with a focus on making these easy, fun, and informative. But at the end of the day, somebody just needs to kind of lean into these opportunities to do that. So, thoughts at this point on any of that or other opportunities that anybody is willing to throw out there and take some time to try and organize?
I'll put it out there now that I probably am the worst person to ask because I don't own a car right now. Unless they're near Turnagain and Laneri, I could get some things together, but which isn't a bad idea. So we could do one around Laneri Park. But in terms of mobility, I am limited to 2 wheels.
When it comes to the third and Ingra site, through that Seeds of Change hat, I do have a use permit for the site. And so if we wanted to have an event there and it tied into Seeds, or I could loop in some of the Seeds youth there and do some community visioning or something like that, then that would certainly tie in. And we're looking at throughout the summer as part of a grant that's going to be in effect for the next summer. We're kind of looking to do some site planning, some envisioning for what changes we want to make happen on the site. And that could be some pretty opportune time to also talk about and extend to what do we want to have happen in our state. So I guess the prompting question that I'd like to offer is how could we have our events be like open and be independently driven, but then connect in for what we're trying to do for the fall, or try and build some momentum ahead towards that. I think that's kind of the big opportunity that we have.
Ryan, so back in the day when I was running Leadership Anchorage, we each summer used to do a Step Up AK event. I don't know if anybody ever heard of it. It was open to the public. It usually was in a different part of town. We rotated around a Solution Fest in Spenard, and we did something in Mountain View. But it was a flexible, open kind of event. People could come and go, don't have to stay for the whole day. It was sort of also recruiting for the next cohort of Leadership Anchorage. Anyway, the whole idea, I mean, and you would think, so we always did it in early August, and you would think it would be hard to get people to come, but it wasn't too bad. And so I also am thinking, like, what can we do midsummer? We're already into early summer, right? So what can we do midsummer without waiting until August? That said, I'm going to be fishing in July and, off the grid. So I just want to offer that as an idea for a way to kind of invite people together. And I think it absolutely could include your youth programming, the visioning for the site, which people get very excited about beyond just your youth maybe. And then linking that to how is this a catalyst for the future we want in Alaska? And, allowing people to just be creative and be outside. So
yeah,
it'd be fun. I hate to sign up for obligations because my husband's listening and I'm retired, but he's laughing at me. But I have the model in mind. I maybe could identify 1 or 2 people who could dive in and help us who also know the model. And again, this was all done at the forum, so that maybe I know we missed the event sponsorship thing, but this could be a light lift in terms of cost and design. So we could brainstorm that. And I go off the grid a week from today. So if we want to talk about it, reach out to me personally.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to be out most of next week, and then Thursday, Friday of the following week. I'll try to join in for the conversations because I really enjoy these, but it may be out of cell service for the next 2 Fridays. This is making me wonder if, if there's an opportunity to come up with some ideas that could then turn into a Leadership Anchorage project. If there was something that I really liked and wanted to get involved in.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I need to reach out to George Martinez anyway. So I will inquire about projects leads that they have or don't have. Of course, he's real familiar with what you're doing. And I'll do some reach out to him before I leave town next week and keep you posted.
So, and then Ryan, could you also just touch bases with Shelley before you go? Because she had indicated in our last meeting that she was interested in maybe something in early August at the site, and maybe you could touch bases with her about what you're thinking of, but also find out if she's made any progress on that and has anything that she wants us to be aware of that might be an option, either to fold into what you're thinking about or maybe in addition and separate.
Yeah, that sounds good. I should be seeing her a little bit later today, and I'll try and run that by her.
Okay, perfect. Cool. All right. Well, it sounds like we've got a little bit of progress there. Any other events, time, place, topic that anybody else wants to grab a hold of and make happen right now?
I'm going to make my usual plug that I think a statewide virtual is complementary to what we're talking about, because this is such a statewide topic.
Right.
And that might be the best way to fill the gap between now and August if we can't do a live event. And we could use the statewide event to catalyze people doing something local around the same week, around the same theme. So, yeah, you know, we could push out the link to the Hometown Alaska recording and say, be part of the dialogue and really have a continuing conversation with whoever joins with that as a springboard. Right. So, yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Okay. So if we could pull off those two this summer, that would be certainly it'd be a great step forward.
Yeah. Yeah, the virtual one, I think either early July or late July. Mid-July, the fish are running.
Okay.
And by the way, and early July, I'm not back until the 7th. So then late July is close to August. But summer goes by in a blink. Man.
Yep, it does. Although, to your point earlier, I've had the same experience that despite all of the conventional wisdom that would say you can't do anything in the summer, I've had lots of good events that have happened during the summer, and I'm surprised at the level of continued involvement that people have for events and activities. So I don't think we should run from that and buy into the ethos that everything stops in the summer. And as I like, poking some of my friends in other circles, startups and innovation don't stop for the summer. So I think it's appropriate that we at least, as we talked about early in the spring, we do need to figure out how to do summer well in Alaska, but that doesn't mean do nothing.
Right.
So, okay. Anything else on the topic of the summer events? Okay, well, let's leave it at that for now. And then the last quick thing I wanted to ask about, Margie, if you're still there, is do you and Mita have a plan in terms of when and how your paper will be ready and published at this point?
Great question. Stay tuned. I do have that kind of lingering query in terms of where we should pitch the article, but as of now, I think it's probably going to take a few different forms. So a short blog post series and like a more kind of like mainstream like Alaska Business Journal piece, and maybe some like audio clips on the website. Like there's so much depth of content. It's not all going to be in one thing. So I think it'll be also a gradual rollout. But the long-term goal is a peer-reviewed journal article as part of the
Yeah, well, that would be a good place for it. The other option that I wonder about is if Jan will be looking for any other content for the Alaska Humanities Forum magazine. She had originally planned on publishing all 6 winning pieces if we had 6, 3 youth, 3 open. So it's possible there's a little bit of fluff in her space planning if you and Mita wanted to see if she was interested in taking what you're doing and including that if it'd be ready in time, if you thought that was a interesting forum for that.
When would that be?
Okay.
When would she
I think she's looking for stuff pretty soon. That was why we had the mid-June deadline for the writing contest winners, was to start folding into their layout planning. So I would assume it's on the order of a week or two. So that may or may not work for where the two of you are at. But that was another idea that I had in terms of a publication that might have some interest there. But I still think in terms of the breadth, if you could get into the Journal of Commerce or something and try and, put a, draw a line in the sand that says blanket, economic models is business in Alaska. I think that could be fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, I'm kind of melting here. Is there anything else anybody wants to bring up that we've not missed or that we've missed at this point that we want to cover today? Going once?
Well,
Going twice?
yeah, I'm gonna nudge.
Okay.
Maybe somebody could do a doodle, and I know I'm not volunteering to do it, but to pick a virtual date. Because if we don't get one nailed, then we can't add it to the press release. Then we can't, put it in the Forum magazine. If it would, Forum magazine might come out afterwards anyway. But I mean, I just feel like that seems. I think the idea of in person at third. Later in the summer seems viable, but something in the middle to build momentum, and maybe use again the writing contests or the Hometown Alaska as the springboard to promote dialogue. If we could doodle amongst ourselves a most viable date, I'd love to help facilitate that. Although I also don't want it dependent on me. But if we just wait a week to talk about it, then it won't happen.
Okay. All right. Well, anybody here a doodle fan? Otherwise, I'm happy to do it. But if there's somebody that's a doodler already, I'd be happy to turn loose of it also.
Yeah. It'd be great if you could. I mean, I could and would, but my hands are just going to be all over. I'm running for the next week trying to get ready for stuff. So
I have an account. I'm not sure how many doodles you get on the free account, but I think they have like one running at any time.
Oh,
so.
yeah, it's kind of unlimited.
Okay, cool.
You just have to deal with ads.
I can do it.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, thanks for the nudge on that, Kitty. Anybody have anything else?
Just
No.
At the risk of making Kai bake, and just want to throw this out there. Probably too short of a window for this cycle, but the SBA has an SBIR grant that's available, and they have it in 2 tracks. One of them is for independent, like a independent project. Another one is for a node or a network, an innovation network, and it could align quite well with what is going on with Alaska version 3. The idea is to encourage entrepreneurship and innovation with the end goal of getting some SBIR interest and applications in. But the work that we're doing through AKV3 seems like a pretty natural connector hub. And we all collectively have enough network connections that we could string together a pipeline for folks who are interested and getting some basic support together, and then getting connections with mentors or other organizations that could then help develop prototype launch ideas, or at least provide some incubation and support for them. So I think the deadline is like this month, like the 30th or the 2nd. It's a slide deck. It's possible that we could be able to throw this thing together, especially if we were working collaboratively. But the funding pool is up to $150,000. And so with that chunk of funding, you could provide a decent incentive to a number of people and still have some left over.
Yeah, I think that's an exciting application. If you can send the link out, let's play with that, because this really fits directly in also with the idea of creating actually a challenge opportunity innovation hub, and rather than trying to be the innovators, trying to bring visibility to the opportunities for innovation and to try and feed the ecosystem, as we've talked about before, in terms of using these dialogues and trying to surface the challenge that are investable, that matter. So this sounds like a wonderful opportunity.
With the timeline and the scale of that, it seems like we need some time to do some design work on what would we actually include that's at that scale over the next, say, 12, 18 months. And maybe next Friday, we can use that as a design platform, a design dialogue to say, what would we ask for? What would we include in the ask if we were going to spend up to $150,000? Because that seems real. And, you know, we've been going sort of evolutionary and incrementally, but I mean, we might need to just reach a little further and put some edges and definition to our vision. So that could happen next week and build room for, oh, thanks for the link, Ryan.
Yeah,
So
good point. So maybe an email with a link to a Google document where we can start fleshing it out a little bit. Probably a complimentary slide deck, because that's the format that they're looking for to get ready for VC pitches.
Good plan. Let's plan on diving into that more deeply next week then. Good, Ryan. Thank you. Anybody else? Anything else for today? All I've got to say is the temperature thermometer on my truck is no longer reading. It's off the scale. I don't know how high the scale goes, but I know it's over 120.
oh my God.
It's warm here. So, all right, I'm gonna run down the road. Thank you all for jumping in today, and I look forward to following up on what we talked about today and seeing you next week.
Thanks,
All right.
everyone.
Bye, y'all.
See ya.